I don't know what time it is for you guys, but it's 5 a.m. here, so I apologize if I sound foggy. I just got up, so I'm going to present to you today about what it's like working as a postdoc in the UK, what the job is, how you find the job, how you keep the job, and what living in the UK is like. Obviously, I've lived here my whole life, so, and I have lived in other countries, but it's difficult to conceptually understand what it's like to live in a foreign country when you. So if you have questions, please ask questions. I can pretty much answer anything you have, but unless you ask me, I won't be able to tell you the answer. So I'm going to share my presentation. And start my presentation. And if anyone has any questions, please ask as they come up, and there'll be space to ask at the end as well. Hopefully this won't be a really long presentation. I don't want to bore you. I've put lots and lots of links in the presentation too, about all sorts of different aspects of this, so that you can click on the links and maybe learn some stuff for yourself. So I'll be giving you guys a copy of this at the end, so you don't have to make notes or anything. Okay, so this is me. I'm Dr. Matt Illsley. I was a postdoc in the UK for more than 10 years, or about 10 years. I have a PhD, and et cetera, and I'm a co-founder with Sergey. I think you've had a conversation or a lecture with Sergey recently, of my company ANAMAD, and we do stuff like making bench science into reality. So finding a job as a postdoc, I've put here a whole load of places you can search for jobs online that are specifically, some of them are specifically about UK jobs, and some of them which will be worldwide international postdoc jobs. I thought it would be nice to just have a little list of places you can just quickly search for jobs that might be related to your field. But the best place I found to search online for jobs is Google Jobs. For some reason, the search criteria is better than most of the other places, and you can set up alerts, and so they email you basically when a new job comes up. LinkedIn is pretty much now, as far as I can tell, like an online living CV, where you put all of the things that you've done into it, and then at a certain point you just click a button and everybody knows you're looking for a job. And that the LinkedIn is good because you have a sort of online living network of people, and all of those people, when you tell them, know that you're looking for a job and will keep you in mind if a job comes up. Okay, so connected to that is almost everybody finds a job through somebody they know. So it's not what you know, it's who you know. So if your supervisor has, knows that there's a job coming up at some company or something, they tell you, you apply. So the bigger that your network is, the more likely it is that you'll find a job. And by your network, I mean, who do you know in science that has jobs that you might want? And you can build your own network through going to conferences and speaking to people. The best thing to do at a conference is to give a presentation or stand by a poster and connect with lots of people. Speak to them about their science, speak to them about your science, find a commonality, make a friend, add them on LinkedIn, and then you're building a network. And then those people will tell you when jobs come up. And you've got to remember that if you're postdocing in a relatively small field, You're going to know all these people for your entire career. So the best thing to do is start early, build networks, make friends, and then collaborate when the science gets interesting. Okay, so the sort of places that you'll work for, if you're working for as a postdoc in the UK, there's 3 places basically that you'll work for. You'll work for a university, a research organization, or a company. So I've put here a slide of what the difference is between everything. But you probably already know what a university is because you're already at a university. In the UK, there are about 120 of them. I've added a link to a web page that describes all the different kinds of universities, because there's different kinds of universities. There's the famous ones, you know, like your Oxfords and your Cambridges, and they're really, really old. So they have really weird structures and really weird ways of doing things. You know, they have like banquets every week, like Harry Potter and stuff. It's really, you know, they're strange. So there are those places, but there are also smaller places which are more to do with sort of industrial processes and working out what's going on with those things. So the thing about universities is they're all really relaxed. People are there from all over the world. And so you'll meet people who are in the same group boat as you are, would just come to the UK and just, you know, starting their first postdoc or first PhD placement. A research organization is a bit like a university in that it's not for profit. It's almost always run as a part or sort of a slight offshoot of a government organization. And the only difference really is that there's very few students at a research organization. It's all about the research, which means there'll be fewer people working there. This link here, it takes you to a list of all of the research organizations that are ratified by the UK government and can apply for funds in their own right. So there are quite a lot of them. They can be in places like the countryside, so they'd be far from anywhere. You need a car to get to them, you know, this sort of thing. So it's important that when you're thinking about a job, you're also thinking about where am I going to live and who am I going to be friends with? Because, you know, you're not always necessarily going to be friends with the people at work. So because those 2 groups, the universities and the research organizations, are publicly run, their pay scales are publicly available. You can just Google, you know, the university or the research organization and what the pay is. And they give you a list of everybody, what everybody's earning. So all you need to know is the job title that you're applying for and the pay scale, which they'll tell you. And you can look up what your salary band will be, and you can work out whether you'll have enough money to live month to month. Because, you know, being an expat could be pretty expensive. So the other place that you might end up working is a company. So companies have really almost always very specific requirements about what it is they're looking for. They want you because you've got specialist expertise in certain aspects of what they're looking at. You know, I don't know what all you guys are studying. But the thing about working for a company is generally there's more training support. It's more than just about the science. They'll ask you to be in charge of people who are doing stuff, or and they'll train you in how to be good at doing that, so that everybody can get the best out of their people. The pay will vary more, and it might be more secretive. You know, so companies don't really like people talking about what they earn, but you can find out that information on things like Glassdoor websites. So it's worth thinking about maybe instead of doing the postdoc route, which is, you know, a really good thing to do if you're into just science, maybe thinking about going and working at a company, because you can become quite set on the way that you research, and companies can just shake that up a bit. Okay, so why do universities and research organizations have postdocs, right? Well, they have them because they've applied for money and they've been awarded money to do a specific thing, a specific science thing. But the university or the research organization doesn't do that itself. It has staff members who are permanent members of staff or semi-permanent, and they're awarded the money because they applied for it. So those people are called a PI, principal investigator, right? Stop me if I'm getting boring. So those guys, they are awarded the money. It's not the university's money. It's not the research organization's money. It's the PI's money because they were awarded it externally. Which means if your PI decides, oh, I don't like living in Nottingham, I'm going to move to the countryside in the middle of nowhere, and I'm going to take my grant with me, he just has to call up that awarding body and say, I'm moving to a different institution, is that okay? And they say, yes, take the money. So it's important conceptually to understand you're not really working for the university. Really what you're working for is the PI. So it's super important because the PI is your point of contact with the organization. And so if things are bad with the PI, things are, there's not really anywhere for you to go. You can go and speak to the university and they might say, oh yeah, that's really bad, we'll do something about it. Or they might say, oh well. So, a good relationship with the PI is super important. And if they're really difficult to work with and they have a reputation for being really, really difficult to work with, consider whether it's worth your time. So the money for an external grant award is almost always 3 or 4 years. If you see a grant, a postdoc, a position that's 1 year long, don't think about that one as being first on your list. That's, it's not worth your, it's consider whether it's worth your time again. So just remember, the PI is your employer. The university or the research organization probably sees you as an extension of them rather than your own, a job in its own right. So say you applied, you're thinking about applying for a job. Should you take it? The first thing to do is have a plan. So first thing I would always say is you're going to be doing this for a really long time. Yeah. So enjoy it, because some of the hours are going to be killer. You're going to need to make lots of sacrifices. If you don't enjoy it, then you're going to get burnt out really, really fast. So decide what it is you want to learn from the postdoc. So you might want to learn how to use super modern equipment, or you might want to learn something that's only tangentially related to your PhD. So a complementary skill which you don't have already. So you might take a postdoc in a slightly related field and learn both. You might want to learn the sort of day-to-day technical aspects of running a grant. So managing the money, or doing the paperwork. I don't know. People are excited by different things. If you're excited by doing paperwork, don't do a PhD. It's my advice. Do something else. You might want to just publish loads and loads of papers. So this is a lot of postdocs. The first postdocs, they're just like, all right, I'm going to publish as many papers as I can possibly publish. In which case, you probably don't want to learn anything. You want support so you can churn the handle and do loads and loads of work. But it's really important because you've got to decide what it is you want, but before you even apply for the job, because you need to know, is this position going to give me the end result that I need? Think about how you might turn that postdoc position, the first job, into a career. What sort of building block does it give you in order to work on something more long-term? So this is obviously if you're short of cash, like most people have just finished a PhD, you're thinking, oh, I need to get a job so I can pay the bills. It's conceptually maybe difficult to think about it long term. But when you get 5 or 10 years down the road, people are going to look at your CV and say, does this look coherent? Has this person thought about what they're doing with their life? Or are they just bouncing around from job to job? And it can be quite an important thing that they look for. Is your life coherent? This is a thing that employers might look for. So the job, does it fit with this plan that you've made about where you want to go? It doesn't have to be a detailed plan, but it's important to have something in your head about what your goals are. So should you take the job, the principal investigator? As I said before, the principal investigator is your go-to point of contact for the employer. So they all have a different managing style, and at a British university, almost none of them will have had experience managing people before they become a principal investigator. So they might have PhD students, and they may have, undergraduate. Well, they definitely have undergraduate students, but they can just tell them what to do. They don't have to work with them like they're a colleague. So they all have different sort of styles of management. Some of them are incredibly over all the detail and they want to know absolutely everything. And some of them are incredibly hands-off. Sergey was my PI whenever I was a postdoc, and he would never turn up to meetings. It was all on me. It was up to me to do absolutely everything. Everybody responds to management in a different way, so you have to know yourself. So, do you need somebody that's more sort of on your case, or do you need somebody to leave you alone and let you keep on going with what you're doing? Do you need somebody to just talk to about science who's, as interested in whatever you're doing as you are? These are important aspects to think about when you're thinking about the person who's going to be running your life for 3 years. It's important that you get along and that you're not going to be super stressed all the time. Okay, also important is their track record. So, it's a tricky one if they're very young, because they might not have a track record. But other than that, they'll have a publication record you can look at. They'll have a publicly available track record of what funding they've received. It almost always is on their university website, because they like to crow and crow about what fundings they've got and stuff. So is their funding stable and secure? Is important, because like I said before, grants are awarded to principal investigators and not to universities so much. So it's an indicator of how big their lab is, how many people that you'll be working with. And sometimes you might be expected to go out and get your own funding. I mean, really seriously, only the USA does that. But if you're thinking about going and work in the USA, that could be a thing that actually happens, where you turn up, you've got a job, you get paid, but only for a short period of time, and then you've got to find your own money. And it can be a lot of money. So, if you're an inexperienced postdoc, then that can be a considerable drain on your time. So also to think about here is your career. So as I said before, people find jobs through connections. So principal investigator is going to be connected to its own network of people they know, and they go and see when they go to conferences. Can you gain access to their network through them? Will they, say, oh, I know people at such and such company who are looking for scientists to do work. So having a good relationship with your PI can lead to other jobs within that network. So, it's important to consider your next step whenever you're taking the first step. Okay, so should you take the postdoc number 3, life in the lab? So have a look at the papers coming out of the lab and look at what the authorship lists are like. So the authorships are almost always whoever did the most work is first author, and whoever got the grant is last author. And everybody in the middle is generally some sort of person within the lab who's made some contribution. So if you're postdocing, you might be in the middle of a PhD student's paper. So there'll be PhD student, and then somewhere in the middle is you, and then at the end is the PI. But it's important that if you've made the most contribution to a piece of work and it goes to be published, that you're first author. So have a look, see who gets first authorship on lots of the papers, and have a consideration about whether that's real or whether it's made up, and whether you might end up doing lots of work and being in the middle of the authorship list. It's important because lots of people look at places of authorship and decide whether you contributed a lot or not very much, and whether the paper is really your work. The other thing to consider is if you've got a grant and it's funded by an industrial partner, are they going to let you publish at all? So industry doesn't like people to tell other people what they're doing because they want to keep it all a secret. So if you're working on an industry academia partnership and you see other people in the lab who've also got those sorts of grants and they're not publishing, it's because those industrial partners don't want there to be any publications. And then think about that really hard, because the publications are how you tell employers that you're a productive postdoc. And if you don't have any papers and you haven't published in a couple of years, they're going to think that you haven't done any work. Publications are, though, patents. So if they patent, then you can say, oh, I was working on this patent. So the other thing to think about the lab is, where is it? Which institution is it based in? Most universities have some sort of career support or a postdoc office or association of other postdocs. So they have the ability to support you if you're feeling a little bit like up on the other side of the world and away from everybody, like no one like. And in a research organization, there might not be one of those. There might be too few people from all over the world to warrant having one. And at a company, there won't be any support like that at all. So think about that. The other thing to think about is, does it have the facilities you want to meet the plan you made at the beginning? And can you access another mentor other than your PI, somebody that is senior enough that they can talk to the PI should things go wrong, and that has an objective view on your career and talks to you about what it is you want from your career, and how you can motivate yourself to do better certain aspects that you're not good at. Mentoring is super important, and when people get to a certain sort of middle level of their career, they tend to take on early career researchers like you guys as a way of giving back. So the PI is your day-to-day supervisor, but you might go and approach another senior academic within the institute and say, will you mentor me to become a better scientist? And you can access a different network of people like that, because you've made a good friend, technically a work colleague. But if you're having trouble with your PI, it can be really a good way to go. Okay, so I've touched on it earlier, but lab mates. So is it a big lab? Are there lots of people working in it, or will you be working on your own? Is it a team? Everybody working for the same goal, or in America, is everyone competing for the same resources and maybe working even on the same projects or really, really similar projects, and then it's some sort of race. It doesn't happen super often in the UK, but in London, I've heard of there being really super competitive labs. So it's something to consider. You don't really want a super stressful life. Maybe don't take a super competitive lab job. Similarly, if it's a really quite a large lab, there'll be some sort of social aspect. So you'll be able to make friends in the lab more easily than if it's just a couple of people. So you've decided that you want to take the postdoc. Has anyone got any questions before we go on? Anybody? No? Okay. Please interrupt and ask questions if you have them, or there'll be a space to ask questions at the end. So you've decided you want to take the job. What does everyone expect? Well, the problem is that, as I said earlier, each principal investigator is completely different and has a different amount of experience managing people. So some of them, it will be the first time they've ever had a person working for them, and they really won't know what they're doing. They won't have had any training. So it's always really highly variable. This is why there's such an important aspect of the job, because some of them will run things where they have to be over everything. You can't spend any money unless they say, you can't order, consumables that you need in 2-3 weeks, and then work gets backed up. So, some of them will, like I said, Sergey never did anything. So, what are you comfortable with? But there are some basic expectations for a postdoc. Of course, you will have specialist subject knowledge, which almost nobody in the world, other people in the world will have, which is the reason why they want to hire you. And you'll be using that in your sort of day-to-day. But there's also stuff that's expected of a postdoc, because you're a senior member of staff relatively to all of the students and the PhD students. You're there because you have safety knowledge. You're a safe pair of hands. Things go wrong, someone can call you and you can come and run and sort out whatever's happened. And because of that, you're expected to do paperwork around that. So there's things like COSH, which is chemical safety hazards, health and safety risk assessments, which are things that you're expected to know about, but will also be trained in specifically how they do them at the institute. There'll be training available or technical support available for specialist equipment. So if you have a piece of equipment you've always wanted to use, and you go to an institute where they have that piece of specialist equipment, it might be worth a really large amount of money. And so they put a technician in charge of it. And that technician then becomes the point of contact, and they know how to use the machine. They might teach you the basics of using the machine if you're really friendly, or they'll be there available to do the work on the machine for you. But you'll still need to talk to them about how you prepare your samples, how things work. Technicians are usually directly employed by the university and have other stuff to do, because the university only really employs them to manage the teaching load. So they're there 9 to 5 on a weekdays, and your hours are likely to be considerably more. So it's important that you have a good sort of rapport with the technicians, because they can be make or break with getting lots and lots of work done or not. Okay, so that's part of the job, managing relationships with the staff who are there to support you. So most postdocs at a university will do a reasonable amount of teaching, to be honest. And at a research organization, there'll be a reasonably frequent presentations, but almost certainly no teaching, because there's very few students. Now, a company, you might have a team of people to manage. So you won't be doing maybe all of the science, you'll be managing a team of technicians. So there are different expectations depending on the role. But if you're a postdoc at a uni, which probably you'll end up doing at some point, you'll do teaching. You'll be hands-on in the lab, teaching undergraduates to do some crazy stuff you maybe never thought of before. But because you're an experienced scientist, you'll just be able to pick it up and do it. So expectations are that almost all the projects are for 3 years, and you'll be working your ass off in the first and second year, and in the third year you'll be trying to find another job. That's the expectation. So people are expecting you to do lots and lots of the work for a 3-year project in 2 years and squeeze it all in, and then sort of coast in the third year. I mean, you'll probably be able to do more, as much work as you did in the first 6 months, but you're basically there to find another job. And most postdocs move, they bounce between institutions. So be super wary of 1-year positions, because you need to hit the ground, get used to the lab, get used to where everything is and who's doing everything and where all the players in the game are. That's going to take you like 3 to 6 months, right? And then you're going to churn the handle, do loads of work, and then publish. So you're probably not going to publish a first paper for a few months at least, depending on how productive you are. I don't know how productive you guys are, but people like Rosa publishes every 2 months somehow. But some people work really hard. So be really wary of 1-year positions, because you might not be able to fit all of that stuff in the time, and then find another job. So be aware of how often the best or a postdoc, postdocs publish in your field, and whether you're likely to be able to manage that in the 3-year period. So this link here is to a website called Dimensions, which is I don't know whether you guys have used it, but it's a way. It's like an AI generated Web of Science, and it PubMed or something. And you can actually filter down to years and sort of level of staff who have published. So you can say, oh, I know, what does somebody in my field publish at my level? And so the searching is really, really quite sophisticated. And you can use that to work out, are you on track? It's good to know. And it's good to know because that will dictate your working hours. The amount of papers you want to publish in a year, can make your working life really, really long. It can be like 60, 80 hours a week. So, when you're not in the lab, there's an expectation that you'll be writing stuff up sometimes. So what does that mean day to day? What's your day-to-day life like in the lab? Well, you'll be doing science, right? That's what you do. That's what you are. You're a scientist. So that's your job. So it looks a lot like it does when you're a PhD student, to be honest. But the thing is, you really know what you're doing when you're a postdoc. You have this sort of innate confidence that comes from having defended your PhD, and you just sort of crack on and seem to churn out loads of work. And that's because you've made lots and lots of mistakes, and you're slowing. The number of mistakes you're making is slowing down. The more experienced you become, and the more sort of hands-on at the bench you become, the less mistakes you make, and the more productive you become. And you see some postdocs who are like superhuman. They seem to fly around the lab, and that's just because they're really, really good at it. But there's also lots and lots of paperwork. So because you're working from a funded position, you have to support the getting of the funds. So you support the grant in all sorts of ways. So you might write loads of presentations. You might do loads of data analysis so that you can write presentations. You write papers. You write you apply and go to conferences, maybe do posters, graphic design and stuff. You go to technical and management meetings. So those are the, they might be on a short grant, they might be every month, and on a long grant, they'll be every quarter. You turn up and you give a technical presentation on all the science you've done in a quarter. And then there's a conversation about what you want to do next. And you may be the only point of contact in the room about what you want to do next. It's up to you to manage the workload and the expectations of the other people on the grant. So having some sort of people skills in that arena can be really, really useful. You plan the work. You do loads of health and safety paperwork as well. So that's your grant as well as the science. That's what you'll be doing. You'll also be supervising students. So at a university, there are a lot of students and maybe PhD students, and they'll want their own consumables and they'll want equipment, perhaps break-on equipment or specific equipment to do specific science. And you'll be probably managing that, doing the ordering and making sure you get the best price and stuff. So it's basically lab management. Sometimes there's a technician that does it for you, but that's only in the really well-funded labs. The rest of the time, it's up to the postdoc. It's always up to the postdoc in the end. So there's also teaching and learning. So right, you've taken a postdoc, right, because you want specific things out of this postdoc. So you got to make sure you get them. So if there's people there, you need to learn what it is they do and how they do it. You need to find out. So you go and speak to them, learn from them. But that's a two-way street. So you also have specialist knowledge people want to know maybe. So you'll be teaching them. And as I said, about the technicians, universities are really super busy places and people book equipment, it can be months in advance. So you have to super plan your work, get bookings made on pieces of equipment you'll need, or the skills you'll need, because you don't have all the skills, so you need to access some people with some skills or technical services, whatever. You need to plan and interact. So as I said at the beginning, universities don't really hire postdocs, principal investigators do. So why do universities have postdocs kicking about, Well, they need you to make them look good is the answer. So at UK university, they have this cyclical assessment period called a ref. It's every 5 years. It's just happened this year in May, which means that all you guys are really well positioned. Excuse me. So if you get now in the next 6 months to 18 months, a 3-year postdoc, then that's right in the window for being refable in the next ref period. So the more great papers you have now means that really good universities are looking to hire you for the next 3-year cycle, because you're more likely to write another really good paper, right? And that's what they want out. They want really good papers so that they can sell themselves. So they want you for all the reasons that we've probably already mentioned about publishing and technical meetings, and the better the quality of their research, the better they're placed in the ref, which means the more money they get from the government. Also, all of these things, ref-wise, are measured in what they call impact. So impact is a word that is mentioned a lot in science in the UK, and it basically means, is this useless? Quite a lot of science has no real function on the face of it. The mRNA vaccines, people were working on this for 20, 30 years. And everybody said, oh, these are completely useless. They're never going to get any use. And then suddenly, overnight, they become really, really useful. That's how science works a lot of the time. You have to tell people, you have to explain to people what it is that you're doing and why it's important. And if you can do that, then they're more likely to give you more money, because they think, oh, it is important. Yeah, we should do more of that. So you'll also be expected to be basically a free teacher, because you're paid from an external pot of money. A period of your time in the week, they'll sort of carve it out from your grant, and they'll make you do stuff to do with teaching, because you're free. So because of that, there's generally a limitation on how much you're allowed to teach in grants. So they specifically say, oh, you can only do 6 hours a week, which is basically, pretty much a day teaching, which seems like a lot to me. That's what you've got. So, you're a free teacher, you'll be doing support of students from sort of undergraduate level to PhD students. And your PI, of course, they have different expectations, but some PIs expect you to be basically a lab supervisor of all the PhD students. So you may have quite a busy workload. And the last thing that the university expects is they expect you to get more money for them by writing more grants. And that can be good for you and can be bad. So longer term, maintaining a postdoc or postdoc positions within a career. So it's super difficult to stay at one university for more than 3 or 4 years. For some reason, UK universities don't really like postdocs hanging about for a long time. It's probably these pensions and stuff. I don't know. They want you to move on, really. They don't really want you to stay. So it's super difficult to maintain a single position at university for more than sort of 5 years. You'll almost never hear of people being a postdoc at the single university for more than that. At a company, you could probably stay much longer, but you will get better paid if you bounce after a 2-3 year period. Bounce to another company, you'll get a pay rise that's bigger than you would get if you stayed, almost always. So your pay suffers if you stay. But there may be better other considerations by then, who knows? The other thing to think about is your effort, right? So I've been talking now for about people working really long hours and doing loads and loads of different things. You can burn out really fast if you spend all of your time thinking and worrying about work, and it is related to how sort of micromanager your PI is. So think about your effort and manage your effort for the long haul, right? So that you don't end up burning out. And conferences are the place where you can meet people in your field, expand your own network, build collaborations that mean you can write more grants because you have different collaborators than before, hear about accessing different pots of money. At the end of the day, science is a collaborative exercise. So you need other people to work with you to do the science. So having a network of people that you know and like and can rely on to do work is super important. So I've added a slide here about grant writing because it can be an option, but there are some pitfalls. So when you help to write a grant, you do potentially get more money to do more work. So you could extend your contract longer than the 3-4 year period. You can be named as the person who gets to do the work. Most grants will let you do that from the UK. You get experience about the way that grants are written, because they can be super complicated to write and get, and there can be lots and lots of different tips and tricks that you'll learn from someone experienced in grant writing. Friends of mine used to call them the weasel words. So there's specific words they would sprinkle liberally into all the applications, and it would mean that they would get more likely to be getting funding. But there was a period of time when if you said anything was nanotube, you would get money, So there are buzzwords that people are really interested in. At the moment, it's, I don't know, water treatment, sustainability, and plastic use. Those are buzzwords that mean you're a lot more likely to get more money. So if you ever want to become your own principal investigator, you're going to need to know all those tips and tricks, and you're going to need to have experience writing grants before you go and write your first one. So the way to do that is to tag on to somebody else's, learn for yourself. There are specific grants for ECRs. What you all are all early career researchers. So if you want to be your own PI, there are specific pots of money out there that you can access as an ECR. It's easier to do if you've got really good papers, as all these things are. So the cons, excuse me, I'm going to take some water. So those are the pros. The cons are, it can take a really long time to hear. So, you know, say you're in the second year, towards the end of the second year of the 3-year period, and you write a grant, you might not hear about it within the 3 years. You know, it can take a year to hear back. It's a long time, you know, to plan up for that sort of leeway if you're thinking about maybe extending the contract. It can be a complete lottery. I just applied for European funding and we were awarded 4.35 out of 5 as our score, and we didn't get money. So people, you know, well, that's a really good score, but we didn't get the money because they ran out of money to give away. So people scored higher than us, yeah. So it's a lottery, basically. It depends on how many people apply, how good those people are, what the funder wants to fund. I can talk loads and more about grant writing because I used to be a program manager at a grant awarding body. So I was in charge of giving away the money. So if you want to know anything more about grant awarding, I could write an entire presentation on that. But basically it's complicated and you'll need to know it if you want a career in science. But on the other hand, it takes time and it's not papers that you're writing, it's grants. So as an ECR, you've got to balance the amount of time you have and the amount of effort you're expending. Okay, so that's all I'm going to talk about on getting a job and using a job, working on a job as a postdoc, right, in the UK. Has anybody got any other questions? Please speak. Anybody?
Got a question. I don't know if I've missed it because I took some breaks, but I want to know if how likely are universities gonna hire someone who's a foreigner as opposed to someone who's British? Is it
cool? Yeah. So that's a great question. Thank you very much for your question. I honor you for speaking. Universities love foreigners. You know, if I walk into any university in the UK, like 80% of the staff are from somewhere else. You know, they're not British people that are working as scientists at UK universities. UK universities are worldwide organizations. You know, we have loads of people, you know, from all over the world working at our universities. And as long as your English is, I mean, your English is obviously great because, you know, conversational English, really good. You're going to have a conversation in the interview and they're going to sort of manage their expectations about English, levels of spoken English. And yours is pretty much the same as mine. So they're not going to worry from that point. They're not going to worry about employing a foreigner. It's not a big deal for them. They do it all the time. Most of the people they employ are foreigners. So it's nothing to worry about. It might be something to worry about for you, having said that, because I mean, my accent is, you know, small. I have a quite a you know, not really their accent. If you go further north in the UK, it can become really, really challenging to understand the people. I don't know whether any of you have seen the Great British Bake Off. It's a UK TV show, and they have people there who are from lots of different places in the UK. And this year, one of the ladies was from Liverpool, and I needed to watch her mouth move in order to understand what she was saying. And I'm an English speaker, yeah. So for you, it can be challenging to understand some of the local accents. Probably you get your ear in. It'll probably only take you, a few weeks, but it's something to think about. Yeah. Any other questions? No. So you're now all experts on getting and keeping a postdoc. Go and do it. Okay, so living in the UK, right? So I expect you've got loads of questions. As I said, I've lived here almost my entire life. So I'm, I don't know what you'll be interested in and what you won't be interested in. So I've put loads of stuff on these next few slides. If you want to know something specific, interrupt, I don't mind, So life in the UK, pretty much everything about life in the UK is available online. I don't know what it's like where you guys are, but if I want to know anything here, I can find it out online. Like there's a bus stop at the end of my road. The buses have an app, and I can tell where the next bus is. So I can leave my house 1 minute before the bus arrives, be at the bus stop, the bus arrives, and I get on the bus. So it makes life a lot easier. There are street view maps of everywhere, so I can plan where I'm going before I get there. So it's like I've seen it already before I got there. So I know where I'm going. I can get my shopping delivered, like grocery shopping, or pre-made food delivered, or clothes or furniture. Everything can be delivered to your house. You can do all of your banking online. You never have to go to a bank ever. You can read all the newspapers online. You can, book tickets and to watch gigs. You can watch TV online. You can work remotely. You don't have to go to an office. Okay. Everything's online. Everything. Which is great. You don't have to talk to anybody. Something to be aware of is that contactless. So no, people are stopping using cash. I think it might be something that's come from the pandemic. But contactless is a bank card where you just sort of wave it at the or an app on your phone where you just sort of wave it at the teller or at the cashier, and it magically pays the money into their account. So you can now contactlessly pay £100 in one transaction, which is I think a lot of money. So having £100 accidentally move out of your account is a big deal. So it's something to be aware of for you guys. Transport within towns and cities is really, really good value for money. If you would go to London and you get on the tube, you can go, like the whole day on the tube, and it costs you a finite amount of money. Really quite small amount of money. But trains between towns are really, really expensive. So if I want to get a train from London to Manchester, which is quite a small amount of distance, it might be cheaper for me to fly. Yeah, which is weird. So, but you can, if you book it really, really far in advance, it can be a lot cheaper. You can download apps that tell you when to book it and how to book it and stuff. Air travel, it can be cheaper to fly to Barcelona than it can be to get the train to Aberdeen. So something to think about. The UK is a pretty small country, really, compared to most other countries, and those road networks are really good, but there's a lot of cars on it, which is why long distance train travel costs so much, perhaps. You can hire a car if you're 25 years old and above. You can hire a car, I'm pretty sure, with any driving license, but if you're living here for more than a few years, you'll probably want to get a British driving license, and then you'll be fine to hire a car and you can drive wherever you like. Okay, so the NHS, everyone loves the NHS. It means that healthcare is basically free or nearly free, at point of contact. You're talking like a couple of quid for a prescription. So that's great news. You get quite a lot of time off, relatively speaking. You get at least 28 days off a year as law. But if you work for a university, it can be really quite a lot more than that. It can be nearly 50 days off. Yeah, it's a lot. And, lots of universities, pretty much nobody's there in August because they've got to take all their holiday before September. So there's holiday year around September to September. It's cheaper to live in the north than it is in the south. So I live right on the south coast in Brighton, and it's a lot more expensive here to live than it is in the north. But there are more things to do. So the pay is lower in the north, perhaps sometimes. As I said, you can find out what the pays will be from the scales that are publicly available. So other than work, what can you do while you're here? Well, the UK is, a pretty old country like yours. And so we've got lots of old stuff lying around. You can go and visit it. And for some stuff, it's free, and some stuff you've got to pay. There's places like Buckingham Palace. You can go and walk around, You can go to the Tower of London and see where they killed all the old kings, Beefeaters in the Tower of London are hilarious, really good value. There's ancient monuments like old castles and stuff, and country houses where, you can imagine Queen Elizabeth I wandering around with a big skirt and a crazy ruff. There's all sorts of stuff to do, to go and see. But there's also all sorts of stuff to experience. So there's loads of theatre, comedy, sport, cinema, music. We have some of the world's top museums and galleries, and pretty much anyone who's anyone plays the UK. So, you can go and see live comedy, you can do whatever you like. So once you're 18, you can drink any, drinking's, okay. And so is betting on sport. And you can make your own beer. So, there are lots and lots of different kinds of churches in the UK. We're pretty much accepting of all religions, but almost none of us go. So, if you wanted to find a church that you really liked, you could go and find one of those. But there probably wouldn't be very many people there, but you can go. Nobody's going to say anything about it. Libraries and museums and art galleries and churches and parks are all free. Just wander in. I went to the History Museum, British Museum. I went to a museum yesterday. It was free. You just walk in. Where are we? Okay, so there's also what's called the right to roam. So British people like walking in the countryside, and so there's laws about landowners stopping you from walking on their land. They're basically not allowed to do it, but you have to walk on certain sort of pathways. But they are everywhere, so you can walk all over the British countryside, no problem, and it's your right to do that. So that means that walking in the countryside is an actual hobby that people do for fun, which is pretty bonkers. And it's, London or UK in general is really near the rest of Europe, and you can go and visit. Europe's great. There's loads of stuff there. You can go to Italy, you can go to wherever, and it's pretty nearby. Okay. So life in the UK, I don't want to sound like we're all really get drunk a lot, but I mean, we all really get drunk a lot. And because of that, life in the UK is pretty much centered around pubs. Pubs are, really within, like equidistant from my house is 4 pubs, and I do live in a big town, but still 4 pubs in, like 30 seconds walk is quite a lot, isn't it, when you think about it? And it's because UK pubs are pretty much integral to life in the UK. Lots of people treat a pub like it's their living room. You go to a certain pub when you want to watch sport. You go to another pub when you want to have a quiet drink with your friends. You go to a different pub whenever you want to have a rowdy night of drinking. You go to a different pub whenever you go on a date or whatever, and you go. So there are different pubs for different reasons. Some of them, I mean, they all pretty much all open at midday on most days, and some of them don't close until 4 a.m. So you can go to your favorite pub until it closes at like 10:30, and then a different pub who might close at 12, and then a different pub until 4. And there's no charge to get in, you're just paying drinks. Some of the oldest buildings in the country are pubs. That's how integral pubs are to life in the UK. So you can go to, I don't know, Oxford, and there's a pub there that Shakespeare would have used. That's how old pubs are. Shakespeare went to the pub. Yeah. So we love pubs, is what I'm saying. Almost all pubs, there's food. I think it might actually be law. There's food available at the pub. On a Sunday, you can get Sunday lunch at the pub. Sunday lunch, a Sunday roast dinner is a traditional thing that people do. And because it's such an effort to make, all the pubs do it for you. You can just bowl up at a pub and get like a huge plate full of veg and a bit of meat and some gravy for a reasonable price. And almost every pub has Sunday lunch, almost all of them. So beer is the thing that most people drink when they're in the pub. I mean, that's not true anymore, really. You can drink whatever you like, but beer is served in pints and halves. It's a really good indicator of the cost of living, a pint. Yeah. So here where I am in Brighton, a pint can cost me £6, right? Which is, I think, a huge amount of money. I don't know what you guys think. But if I go quite far north, and maybe into the countryside, a pint can cost me less than £3, which is a considerable difference, right? And it's an indicator of the cost of living. So you can find a list. I've put a link here to a list of all the different sort of places in the UK and how much it costs to buy a pint as a sort of general indicator of how much it's going to cost you to live there. If you go to the pub with friends, which almost everyone does, because who goes to drink on their own, right? If you go to the pub with friends, then drinks are bought in rounds, right? So if you go with 5 friends, you might buy 5 drinks, but only go to the bar once. So this is how we do it. We just all go to the bar, buy whatever anyone else wants, and then it goes round. Hence the name rounds. Okay, so I've put here a list of all the typical beers you can buy, which might mean something to you and might mean nothing to you. But basically, beer is slightly bitter, and it's because of the hops that's been put in it. And British people quite like that. So there are variations on how bitter things are, basically. And an IPA and Indian Pale Ale is pretty much as hoppy as it gets. And so my wife says it smells like perfume. Yeah, it smells really, really nice, but it also tastes like perfume. It tastes horrible. I mean, I really like it, but she doesn't. She likes mild, which is much less hoppy. yeah, swings and roundabouts, right? It's up to you what you like. So because pubs are central to daily life, right? You can do pretty much, so there's loads of things to do there, right? They have around the corner from me, they have one of the best pub quiz nights in the town on a Monday night. So on a Monday night, you could just go there, book a table, go there at like 8 o'clock. There'll be like an hour and a half, 2 hours worth of quiz. British people love a quiz. I mean, we love a quiz. Yeah. A quiz will be about anything, random stuff. There'll be a music round almost always. There's like loads of general knowledge questions. The pub around the corner from me has a inappropriate plasticine making model competition. So you make an inappropriate, almost always sexually inappropriate for some reason, little model of whatever they ask you to make, and then the best one wins a prize. Pub quizzes generally, if you win, there'd be like 3 envelopes to pick from, and one of the envelopes will have like 120 quid in it. So you're all clever people, you've all got PhDs nearly, right? You could win money by going to the pub. There are sing-alongs. So there's also, like some pubs, not all pubs, have a man that comes in on like a weekend and plays the piano. I find it really annoying, but other people really like it. And then they also have a little sing. I mean, I think it's weird, but it's traditionally, historically accurate for what pubs are. Yeah, this is what people used to do. So lots of them have like a board game library where you can borrow a board game. There are hundreds and hundreds of board games. So you can have pubs that do all sorts of different kinds of board games. Sometimes bands play in pubs, depending on how big they are. There can be open mic comedy nights. Some of them are microbreweries and make their own beer. There are really, honestly, hundreds and hundreds of pubs. So that's pubs. Any questions about pubs? I like a lot of pubs. So, I can answer pretty much any question. Oh, I'm so disappointed in you all. Okay, pubs. So food. British people have a reputation for having very bad food. And I'm not sure whether it's true or not. I think it's probably partially true. I mean, we like food a lot, but we don't really like making food, I don't think, as a people. Traditional British food is pretty much, you can get that out of the pub, right? So traditional British food is stuff like sausages and mash, pies, steak and ale pie, or chicken and mushroom pie, mashed potatoes. But not all pubs are the same. So some, there's another pub around the corner here. It has Thai food as the food, or Indian food, or there's all sorts of different styles, cuisines. Some pubs have like to serve that food. But you can almost always guarantee to get sort of traditional British fare at a standard pub. And as I said before, on Sunday, the best pub for Sunday roasts will have it booked up like the previous Sunday. So you've got to plan ahead if you want to go. We really like fish and chips, or we're really notorious for fish and chips. I'm not sure whether British people actually like fish and chips. I suppose we do. There is a fish and chip restaurant just near me. It's pretty good. But it is basically all deep fat fried food, yeah. So it's brown food. And mushy peas. Mushy peas are a delicacy from the north. Our northern people love mushy peas. And chips and gravy. Weird. We are pretty much all inclusive when it comes to food in Britain. British people will taste and try everything, right? Which means there'll be Thai food near you wherever you go, because we love Thai food. Some mu ping, yeah, please. So, you know, we love all different kinds of cuisines. There is pretty much everything represented within our restaurant world in a small locale. And there is, even in very small towns, some restaurants you can go to that are of reasonable quality. Cooking is on TV a lot. Yeah, I was talking earlier about the Great British Bake Off being like a major event in TV world. That's just people standing around making cake. That's it. That's all they do. They stand around and they make cake, and then you watch people eat the cake. That's TV. Yeah, that's actually on TV. People watch it. I watched it yesterday. I was really excited. I mean, it's cake, basically. That's weird. People are weird. The kind of style that is of cooking on TV is pretty much traditional French technique. So it's, like fancy, but mixed with British people's love of food. So there'd be all sorts of different types of food being cooked, but it's made fancy. That's on TV. Our food influences are from our Commonwealth. So, British people famously invaded everywhere and subjugated all the peoples and stole all your food. So, all the foods are with us now. We have them and we won't let them go. So we like, Indian food. The national dish was chicken tikka masala for a really long time. So we love it. Okay, all the people. Oh, anybody got any questions about food? We love food. We'll talk about it forever. Ask us a question. No? No questions. Basically, you'll be able to eat if you come. Okay, so the people. So as I said earlier, the more northerly you go, the stronger the accent gets. And it can be difficult even for somebody like me, who's a native British person, to be really understanding of what's happening sometimes, to really, really concentrate. You do get used to it, and you get used to it really fast. All of you guys have got probably really good English. I don't know, because you won't speak. Any of you? No. All of you guys have got good. I mean, when I came, I spoke to lots of you. Yeah, you've all got really great English. You'll be able to get by for the first week or two before you get your ear in, and then it'll be like natural. Yeah, don't worry about it. People in the north, although they have strong accents, are really friendly compared to southerners like me. So people in London and the southeast, we're like heads down, ignore everybody, ignore the world. I don't want to speak to people, right? I do everything on an app because I don't want to talk to anybody. In the north, they're not like that at all. They're the opposite. So they're really friendly people. That's, you can just broadly separate those people into those two groups. Of course, there are variations wherever you go. So I have a friend who works or worked very recently in a London high school, right? There are 170 languages spoken by the people that live there. So there are people from everywhere in London, everywhere. And you will be able to find people from probably near where you live, right now, from your hometown, living in London, because everybody lives there. So it's a really super multicultural place. When you go out of London and go to the major centres of where there are universities, basically, so where you'll probably go, like Manchester and places like that, it's similar. It's very similar. There's people from everywhere. When you go right into the middle of the countryside, it can be quite like those people don't really move very far from where they were born. They're a bit weird. So they can be a bit weird too. But the majority of people are really lovely. One thing that British people are notorious for is being slightly sort of, reserved, not particularly friendly. And we might give that impression at work quite a lot, actually. So work colleagues, if you work with somebody, you might really not know anything about them other than the fact that they work where you work and they do whatever they do. They might never ever talk about what it is that they do. They may never ask you to dinner. you know, which is perhaps a normal thing other places. Some of those people will want to go to the pub, and when they get to the pub, they'll be much more friendly and open and honest about who they are. When they're at work, they're sort of a separate work person. Do you see what I mean? They sort of keep work as sort of a little sort of box. Then they can put the box away at the end of the day and they don't have to think about it anymore. Technical staff at a university who work 9 to 5 will almost certainly fit into that category. They do their 9 to 5 job. They really don't want to talk about anything else while they're there. Perhaps they might be a bit reserved, a bit standoffish. Job, work, out the door, home, you know, to their mates. And that's when they talk about life. They don't do it at work. So that can make them seem a bit sort of reserved, a bit sort of standoffish, a bit difficult to get to know. So this is why having a social aspect of the lab is important, because, you know, if you're with a whole lot of other postdocs from around the world, you're likely to all be in the same boat, and, you know, you'll be able to find people that will go to the pub with you and will socialize with you, other than just, you know, people that are technicians who probably just want to go home. British people love pets. I've got a cat, and I'm really surprised my cat, because it's, you know, really early in the morning. He may be asleep. He may, you know, I was surprised he's not here standing in front of the keyboard, like complaining at me because I'm speaking and waking him up. You know, we love cats, we love dogs. Posh people have horses. You know, we're a nation of pet lovers. In the South, you know, as I said, we're not really prone to grand displays of emotion. We're quite sort of reserved. And, you know, oh, it'll be okay. Don't worry about it. Just get on with it. Northerners are much more sort of open to being honest about their feelings. One thing that is, you know, the reason perhaps that we don't do friendly is because we don't like small talk. You know, I'm not expected to make conversation with everybody I meet. I mean, sometimes it's nice to have a little chat, but most of the time, you know, you don't have to interact if you don't want to. Just say hi and thanks, and that's enough social glue to get us by. Anyone have any questions about the people? About the North-South divide? About working places where the accent's funny? Any questions? I think this probably is the thing I'd be most worried about if I was coming to another country. And British people are really, as a whole, really friendly. And I don't think it's anything to be super worried about. But then I would say that because I live here. Yeah. Your mileage may vary. Okay, how to meet people. Okay. So it's difficult if you're coming to a different country and you basically don't know anybody. How do you meet like friends? How to get to know people, especially if the people you work with are like, I'm doing this work so that I can do work and then go home, and they don't really want to get to know you. See what I mean? It can be difficult to something that I would be worried about as yeah. So I've put in here about all the things you can do at a university, and then maybe things that you can do at the other two places, like the research organizations and the companies. Okay. So universities, because they're international bodies, have clubs and sort of staff clubs and student clubs and societies that are specifically dedicated to supporting people that are international people, right? Because we want you to be, you know, have a nice time. So there are support groups, there's support clubs, there's, you know, you can access all of those things as a staff member just as easily as you can as a student. So there are specific dedicated clubs that you can join. If you are sharing an activity outside of work, people are super friendly, yeah, and perhaps more interested in getting to know you than they would be at work. So if you go to, I don't know, I'm just a yoga class on a Tuesday, you might get to know the people at the yoga class and they might become friends of yours. And that's much more likely than if you'd met those people at work. For some reason, I don't really know why. That's just the way that it seems to work. You can go to night classes in the UK and learn pretty much anything you want. As native speakers of other languages, you could probably teach at those night classes. So you could earn some, pocket money or make some friends by being teachers of, languages. I've probably repeating myself here. Group activities are ways to meet people. People, like I said before, they sing in groups for some reason. You can do that in like a club. It's weird. So that's how British people meet other people, basically. Okay, so I've put here the bants. The bants. British people quite like banter, which is basically a light-hearted way of talking to one another. And it can seem, if you're not from here, that we're being really, really, really rude to one another. So something that I thought I'd put in. I've put in a whole load of examples in the links of TV and sort of films where banter is like a thing that happens. Things like some US sitcoms are quite bantery, like Frasier and stuff. But I've put here just English examples. It's basically a gentle mocking of one another. So we remind people of that time they were an idiot, or we construct elaborate backwards and forwards conversations which seem to go on forever and ever and ever and ever between friends. You just insult your friends, basically. And then they insult you back. And we call that banter. Things like race and religion are completely off the table unless you know the person really, really, really well, which is why I mentioned it. Because if somebody's racist to you and then they say, oh, it's just banter, it's not banter, they're just racist people. Yeah. And you can't really do banter if you're writing it down. It doesn't really work as a written thing because it's too formal writing. So text messages sometimes are really, really informal and they can work. But only sometimes. The rest of the writing down, like emails and stuff, it just never, ever works. So it's just too formal. So Hot Fuzz is a film by an English guy about a policeman. And it's really funny. And it's basically just banter the whole film. And Fleabag is a really, really good example. Okay, so things that British people talk about other than that, like I said before, like TV, 70% of TV seems to be cooking and comedy. So, and then the rest of it's about houses. So there's TV at the moment, which is about people learning to dance. It's called Strictly Come Dancing. There's famous people learning to dance. I mean, I don't know why anyone would want to watch that, but apparently it's a really big deal. There's the show about cake I was telling you about, and there's quiz shows. So as I said before, British people love quiz shows. I mean, like, we love quizzes. We love a quiz. And there's two kinds. Generally, you can split them into two kinds. There's a quiz show where absolutely anyone can just bowl. You have to apply to go on, but you can just go on the show. And then it's a quiz for the general public. And then there's a variety where it's just for comedians to go on and be funny. And when the comedians go on, it's just about them being, hilarious. So it's not really about the quiz. And it's just an excuse for them to be funny. We talk about the weather so much because it changes all the time. So if I look at the weather app before I go out in the morning, it says it's going to be cloudy all day. when it gets to 3 o'clock, it'll start absolutely raining really hard. And I'll be annoyed because I didn't plan for that. Yeah, because I didn't, when I looked at the app in the morning, it said it wasn't going to rain. So I'll talk to people, I'll be like, why is it raining? Just, you know, a stupid thing to do, but that's what we do. We do it a lot because it changes all the time. British people love to moan. I don't know why we love to moan so much, but we do. We like to moan about, you know, pretty much anything, but mostly about the people in charge are doing it wrong. We like to moan about that a lot. Sport. So mostly men talk about sport a lot, and I've put here a link to an IT Crowd episode where the IT Crowd is quite an old comedy show now, but they talk about British men and how they speak about football and what terrible things that can lead to. I've put a link to the episode in case you wanted to watch it. But yeah, that's what we talk about. So I'm coming to the end of the presentation. I've put together here a list of useful links that might be helpful for deciding whether you want to go and work in the UK or not. So things like knowing your working rights, you know, what have you the right to and what don't you have the right to. Deciding whether the UK is for you or not. Ways to choose postdocs, you know, lists of things to consider. Whether to go into the postdoc industry, and then tips for applying to get postdocs. So there's just a big list of stuff you can access. Okay, so that's the end. Where are we? It was only half an hour. Was that half an hour or was that an hour and a half? I don't know what time is it. How long have I been speaking? It doesn't matter. Questions? No? Anybody? While I'm here, you know, I'm on email, but while I'm here, you may as well ask me questions if you have any. Okay, so it seems like nobody has any questions. Nope. Okay. So no questions. That's fine. If you come up with, I will try and send you a copy of this presentation so you can click on all the links. If you have questions based on whatever, just send them along in an email, and I'll do my best to answer the questions or find out an answer to the question that you have. Otherwise, thank you very much.
Thank you very much as well.
Thank you very much.
No problem.